You won't remember all my champagne problems. The skies must have pitied Nathan Sullivan that night. The pitter-patter of the rain greeted him as he solemnly walked towards the train platform, awaiting his 9:30 p.m. train, for which he booked his ticket at the last minute. He opted to take the train back to campus that night. He did not trust himself to keep a mind clear enough to handle even an hour-long drive from his family home in a town called Rocker and back to his dorm. He needed this. He needed time to process what had just unfolded. He needed to brace himself for what awaited him when he went back to his university quarters. At the back of his head, he knew that he must have looked pathetic, because the child who sat across from him after they boarded the train would not stop staring at him. Was it the puffiness and redness around his eyes? Was it the seemingly lifeless eyes that are just downright tired at this point? He did not know. Nathan watched as drops after drops of rain splattered across the window, as the train journeyed away from Rocker. He should have been relieved, leaving behind his town that had left him despondent beyond words, but he was not. He even dreaded what awaited him back in Queenstown University. Would his group of friends be consoling him? Would they give him the space he evidently needed? He did not know what was worse. He did not know what he wanted. He lost direction in the moment his boyfriend of almost 4 years, Don Jenkins, uttered, "I'm so sorry." Tonight should have ended differently. For months, Nathan had been envisioning how their life would change after he finally proposes to Dawn. He thought that they could throw an intimate engagement party, just their immediate family and closest friends in attendance. Their schedules, sure, would permit this, as Queenstown had just finished their examinations for the winter semester. Next stop would be Christmas break, so they were both pretty free. Nathan even imagined the moment he would change his Facebook status from in a relationship with Don Jenkins to engaged to Don Jenkins. But life took a turn towards the unexpected. He was going to change his relationship status indeed. However, it would not be to announce his being affianced, but rather his cold welcome to singlehood. Nathan's sister Stella disguised the marriage proposal as a supposed party, celebrating her recent promotion. Stella worked for a marketing firm and had recently been moved up to being junior executive, so this was a believable excuse to celebrate. Dawn did not ask any questions, and Nathan was under the impression that he was very pumped to see the latter's family that night. To Dawn's astonishment, some of their tightest colleague companions were present in the Sullivan household that night, and Rocker too. At first, Dawn might have been skeptical. Nonetheless, he danced the night away with Nathan and chatted animatedly with his friends. The song Enchanted was purposely playing as Nathan and Dawn slow danced with some other couples that were present. Nathan deliberately led him to the center of the room in anticipation for his coming proposal. Dawn, Nathan recalled whispering, hours after it happened. It still stung. His life had indeed changed, but not for the better as he expected, prior to the rejected marriage proposal. Replied Dawn. His eyes closed as he seemingly savored the night. Nathan stopped dancing at once, prompting Dawn to open his eyes. Nathan's bright, hopeful blue eyes met Dawn's confused gray ones. The former then got down on one knee, anxious but optimistic. He must have confused Dawn's perplexed face as mere surprise, and not a foreshadowing of the rejection. Nathan surely did not see it coming. Even recalling the events that unfolded only over an hour ago stung. As he sat in the train and felt the velvet ring box in his pocket, Nathan still was not able to fully process Dawn's reaction. The ring box felt heavy. It served as a reminder of what could have been. Weeks ago, Nathan was just expressing his desire to give the family heirloom to his soon-to-be husband. "I really want to give him Grandma's ring, Mom," he said weeks earlier. "Then give it," Susan affirmed, pouring milk on her beloved son's teacup. He was home in Rocker having tea with his mother, Susan. At this point, Nathan had told all of his immediate family members and some of his closest friends about his plan. He was that confident of Dawn's affirmative answer. Susan was ecstatic beyond words, pumped that one of her children would finally tie the knot. She was even more elated to know that Grandma Sullivan's ring, which Susan had inherited and subsequently passed down to Nathan, will be the engagement ring. She knew how important Dawn was to Nathan, and vice versa. Over the years, she saw how the two grew. She saw how they developed from shy high school seniors who clearly had feelings for one another, who were head over heels for each other, all throughout their college years. Not one seeing them could doubt their love. Even as they faced rocky points, especially during Dawn's numerous downs, while he faced his countless demons, their love remained strong. People in Don and Nathan's hometown rocker were not as supportive. From the very onset of their relationship, a lot of hometown skeptics doubted the degree of Don's love. Rumor has it that Nathan was significantly more invested in their relationship than Don. Others pitied Don and firmly believed that his history of mental health issues held him back from loving Nathan wholeheartedly. Despite being the talk of the town at times in a negative light, Nathan did not care. All he wanted was a warm, loving home with Don. He was looking forward to graduating from Queenstown that summer and starting a life away from Rocker. He did not need their townspeople's approval. After all, Janet from down the street and Mila a few houses down the block did not experience the love that he and Don shared. They did not know about the nights that he had held Don as he cried, his demons plunging his mind yet again. They did not share the fun times at the Queenstown yard, walking hand in hand and braving the cold school days together. That was the kind of love that you had to experience for you to understand. So despite the skeptical onlookers' comments, Nathan ignored them. Their love was much too strong to be affected by heresies and judgmental remarks. Nathan fished out his wallet to check if he had enough cash on him to afford a bus ride back to campus, or if he would have to walk. A picture of a smiling Don greeted him. It was a Polaroid picture of Don that he had taken over 2 years ago. It pained him to see that dimpled smile. He thought if he would even be able to look at Don in the eye again if he ever saw him on campus. He thought about what would happen to their friend group now that he and Don had basically subjected them to the much dreaded "take sides now, your group's couple have split, so it'll be awkward as hell if we all sat at lunch together" shenanigan. He thought about what their next and final semester at university would entail. Would Don avoid taking classes that had Nathan in it? Would they even glance at each other at graduation? What about their plans after graduation? For months now, Nathan had been dreaming of being engaged to whom he thought was the love of his life. He knew that Don wanted to go on to the Queenstown Graduate School, but he himself wanted to kickstart his career right away. He thought they could rent an apartment in the city, just a stone's throw away from Queenstown for Don and near enough to the tech companies that Nathan had been eyeing to work for. Nathan had even brought up adopting a puppy once they graduated. Cookie, they would name it. Don would gaze intently at Nathan, smile weakly, and agree. In retrospect, had Nathan been naive for not seeing the signs that perhaps Don did not see the same future that he had envisioned? That goofy smile would never be directed at me ever again, thought Nathan. But he left you standing at the gazebo like a fool. He showed you up in front of your families and your dearest friends. He rejected you because he doesn't want to spend the rest of his life with you. Another voice in his head countered as the events of that night unfolded in his mind again. Nathan got down on one knee and as if on cue, the volume of the music lowered. People who were dancing around him and Don also stopped to watch the beautiful spectacle they expected to unfold. Don put a hand over his mouth upon realizing what this meant. Nathan was already tearing up even prior to delivering his planned speech. Don Jenkins, I met you when we were 7 years old. Throughout elementary and high school, I never would have thought that every high and low of our odd friendship, turned rocky relationship, turned stable and constant companionship, would lead up to this. Fast forward to college and we're inseparable. I'd like to think that we are soulmates, but I want to make this love everlasting. I want to wake up every day to your gray eyes and your tightest hugs. I want to adopt many puppies with you and have you read poems to us every night. I want to hold your hand through your good days and bad. I love you, Don Jenkins, and as you would have always quote, you have bewitched me body and soul. Marry me. Nathan delivered flawlessly, one hand holding up the ring box and the other clutching Don's hand. Don's eyes were glistening with tears at this point. The spectators around them were holding their breath, anticipating his yes, but pin-drop silence enveloped that gazebo. Only the occasional rustling of the leaves at a distance and barks of a neighboring dog could be heard, until Don, to everyone's surprise, dropped Nathan's hand. This is very overwhelming to me, he whispered. Susan Sullivan's mouth dropped. Stella, Nathan's sister, almost dropped the bottle of Dom Perignon that she had brought for the occasion. Nathan and Don's friends were gazing at them in astonishment, unbelieving that rejection was coming. But based on Don's downcasted face alone, they knew the answer before he even said it out loud. Please, Don, Nathan weakly uttered. He was now down on both knees, as if begging. Marry me? He asked again. This time, he had a lot less hope in his voice, and a lot more desperation. That was when Don let out a severed cry and sniffed, "I can't, Nate. I'm so sorry," he said before running from the gazebo and into his car. The other people in the gazebo watched in disbelief as Don disappeared into the dark where his red Honda Civic and eventually drove off. Nathan could not bear to look at the man he loved. He could not bear to watch him leave. Little did he know that that was the last time he would ever see Don. He just stayed down on both his knees like a poor punished boy. As Nathan walked back to campus from the train station that night, 1,000 questions bombarded his head. But one stood out. Where did he go wrong? For Don Jenkins, Nathan Sullivan's never in fact went wrong. "It's all in my head. It's me, it's me, it's me," Don repeated to himself for the 9th time that night. After he left Nathan crestfallen on that gazebo, he ran to his car, fully aware that all the eyes of the spectators on that gazebo were on him. In his old but functional Honda Civic, he drove off to the unknown. Mindlessly and with tears streaming down his pale face, he drove through the town of Rocker. It was not until he almost crashed into a car on the opposite lane that he forced himself to stop at the nearest gas station to recuperate. That proposal truly happened. Nathan proposed and he rejected it. As Don parked in the front of the convenience store at Love's, the weight of the situation fully dawned on him. Nathan had been nothing but a good man to him. He had the patience of a saint, even on days that Don felt like he did not deserve it one bit. He closed his gray eyes momentarily and rested his forehead on the steering wheel, unbelieving that this was what his life had come to. He thought of the first time he felt something for Nathan. Don's father had attempted to hit his mother that night, before passing out drunk. Of course, Don got in the middle of them and took the blow. Once his father was snoring, he then ran to Nathan's place for solace. That was the first time Nathan held him. "It'll be okay," he whispered, as he gently ran his fingers through Don's soft brown locks. "I will never leave you." It felt too real, recalling these memories. It was as though Don could still feel the gentleness of Nathan, a stark juxtaposition to his father's rough ways. He could still smell Nate's fresh, minty breath as he spoke in whispers, showering him with words of comfort. Don could still feel Nate's breath on his neck. He thought of their very first day in Queenstown. The air was more chilly than Don had anticipated, so even in his thick cashmere sweater, he felt extremely cold. He was pretty sure he was flushing furiously at that point, as he always did whenever it would get too cold. Nathan was quick to notice, though. Don did not have to utter a word. "Poor baby," Nate commented as he wrapped his jacket around Don, and the latter blushed. They would spend the rest of the day exploring Queenstown Square, window shopping and eating at a pizza place called Joe's, which would then be their go-to restaurant for the next 3 years in university. They would form a solid friend group consisting of Jonah, Sasha, Jillian, and Steven. This group would be at Joe's almost every day, whether it be for a chatty lunch or a treat after a long day of studying in the library. They would be so tight throughout the next few years in college, not knowing that it would only take a rejected marriage proposal to tear their group apart. He thought of all the times that Nathan had made him breakfast in bed whenever they were in their dorms. Don had never been a fan of breakfast because he would rather sleep in, given that he had difficulty sleeping almost every night, and sometimes laid awake in bed until the early hours of the morning. Nathan, on the other hand, cared deeply about Don's health. He would wake the latter up with whispers, tickles, and kisses. At times, he would just stare at Don's evidently tired figure until he woke up. Nate would always make a heavy breakfast for Don because he knew that the latter had a tendency to skip meals throughout the day. Don would savor the bacon and eggs or French toast and fruit that Nathan had prepared, eating ever so slowly because he found himself looking over at Nate so much and admiring him for a little too long. "You're too handsome, Nate," he would say. Nathan would blush and lean in for a kiss. He always looked into Don's eyes after kissing him, as if savoring the moment and in disbelief that he got the privilege to love this man. "You deserve the world, Nathan," said one morning. And he meant it. Time and time again, Nathan would express how Don deserved to be free from his demons. They would sit in the balcony of Nathan's dorm room, late at night, cuddling, or staring up at the night sky together and just talking. "If I could take some of your pain and go through them for you, I will," Nathan sweetly said. Nathan had always felt for Don. He felt for Don and his mother, who had been enduring years of abuse from his drunk father. He felt for Don, who never felt like he was strong enough to fight for himself and his mother. He felt for Don, who feared that he would one day turn out like his father. That was why he was always there for Don, in a heartbeat. Nathan would hold him as he cried, cried for himself, cried for his mother. When they were both back home in Rocker and Don just had an argument with his father, Nathan would be outside on the porch with Don's favorite comfort food, McNuggets, fries, and an apple pie, in no time. As Don snapped out of his stupor, he caught a glimpse of a McDonald's store, right beside the convenience store he was parked at. His heart ached. Everything reminded him of Nathan, and all the kind gestures that he had extended to Don, and now he probably would never feel the warmth of his hand again. He would never hear the comforting words from Nathan's mouth, and butterflies he would feel after. Nathan never went wrong. In Don's eyes, Nathan had always been too good for him. Don was well aware that a lot of Nathan's extended family members and even neighbors felt the same way. They must have seen Don for who he truly was and not how Nathan falsely perceived him. Don imagined that after the fiasco that went down at the gazebo tonight, his screwed up life at home and his abusive father would probably be Nathan's aunt's topic for the next week or so. What a pity. Poor Nathan and that boy Don would have made a lovely family, one of them would say. Shame. Too bad that boy Don is fucked in the head, another would butt in. They would all shake their heads and click their tongue in disapproval. His father's fault, if you ask me, another aunt would comment. The moment that family moved to Rocker, I knew that that drunk old man had been abusing this boy. They were probably right. Don was beyond convinced that the extent of his father's emotional and physical abuse toward him and his mother had damaged him beyond repair. Nathan tried. For the longest time, Don also deceived himself into thinking that Nate's unwavering loyalty and deep love could patch him up. But as he recalled how he left Nate hanging tonight, how he rejected the proposal for the only person he was certain he loved, he knew that he was probably as fucked up as everyone made him out to be. You couldn't even give him a reason. That was the bare minimum after humiliating him in front of everyone you knew, a voice in Don's head said. It was true. The moment Nathan got down on his knee, Don knew the answer at once. It was a no. If he truly loved Nate, he would never subject him to a lifetime of uncertainty and rockiness with himself. Nathan deserved to be loved wholeheartedly. He deserved the kind of love that he gave so frivolously to Don. He deserved love that was not half-assed, and Don would not be able to give him that. Don had not been able to give him that for the past few years. Surely, Nathan took what he could get from this fragment of a man. But Don knew that he deserved more than that, and the day may come that Nathan would want more, and Don again would not be able to give him that. He deserved to be loved by a person who was whole, and that person was not done. Funnily enough, even as Don imagined all these scenarios in his head, he could almost hear Nathan comforting him. I'll never be good enough, Don would say. Try again, Don. It would take much more than that to make me leave, Nate would say. How I wish I could see yourself like I see you. It's over now, though. Don had finally snapped out of this years-long riviere and decided to face the music. It was bound to happen sooner or later. He had to get over his personal issues at home and make himself whole before he could love another person fully. That night at the gas station, he vowed to fix himself. He vowed to make himself strong enough to finally stand up against his father and make a better life for himself and his mother. Maybe then he could go back to Nathan if he still wanted him. Maybe then Nathan would stop thinking that he was the one who went wrong. But Don Jenkins never mustered up the courage to stand up to his father. They fell into an old routine, one that he had been accustomed to since he was 7, when his father started drinking heavily. Don also never returned to school, choosing to care for his weakening mother and drunken father instead. Nathan Sullivan soon realized he did not go wrong. In the years to come, he would find a gorgeous red-headed man who also worked at the same tech company as he did. He would hold his hand and not let go as they danced the night away. He would then go on to propose using Grandma Sullivan's ring heirloom, and he would eagerly say yes. He soon forgot Don Jenkins, although the scars that he left still lingered and stung every now and then. But Nathan was happy. Don could not say the same. Not having finished his last term of college and now working a minimum wage job in Rocker, he was at an all-time low. He soon took to drinking to ease his worries. The skies must have pitied Don Jenkins that night, because he finally succumbed to the very thing he vowed not to be. The end. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force, and stay wholesome.